On tonight's edition of the CHGO Cubs related podcast, the Chicago Cubs, the Milwaukee Brewers, for all the marbles, a decisive Game 5 on Saturday night. We'll preview it all and break it all down on tonight's edition of the CHGO Cubs related podcast. This is the CHGO Cubs-related podcast driven by Toyota. Let's go places and bet 365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. Use code CHGO365 at sign up. Hello, everyone. My name is Corey. I am joined, as always, by Brendan. We are coming to you on Friday, October 10th. And Brendan, to quote the modern great poet, 1CM Punk, ain't it great to be alive on a Friday night in Chicago?
This is such a privilege to do the show with you, to talk about this game, all the stories we've covered over this year, years back, going into the weeds about Brad Keller in February, talking about Daniel Palencia's trade years ago, talking about all the different nuance and the minutia and the eye rolls that you have given me over the years and the ignorance of my late morning or late night text. It's for moments like these, for games like these. Every single reason we do a show, we talk with you guys, listeners, is to have exactly what we saw at Wrigley last night and to prepare and wake up on a Saturday to watch one of the most critical games we have experienced this decade. It is an absolute privilege to do this.
100%. And it's, you get that feeling too. We have a lot to talk about. I'll give you an outline in a minute, but you get that sense too. There's so much minutia throughout the season. We go through every little thing. We're yelling at Jed for this or Counsell for this or this player. When they are in the middle of the NLDS, it is ride for the boys and nothing else. That is all that matters. The Ricketts talk, the offseason, another time. All that matters is supporting the boys in the correct shade of blue in this case, in this series. The outline for you is that there is a decisive Game 5 on Saturday night, a little less than 24 hours as we start this broadcast here. And we are going to break it down. Obviously, that'll include some discussion of the first 4 games in this series, but we will look ahead to a decisive Game 5. Brendan, as we are recording this live here on Friday night, as you might expect, both managers doing, their gamesmanship, their chess match stuff. So we have not a specific preview for
I love
you.
it.
We don't know who's going to be pitching. We're not positive what I imagine Craig Counsell's lineup continues to look the same, but I think Pat Murphy maybe flirting with changing things up a little bit. But we'll talk about what they might do or what we might see in this final game. But Brendan, I think you and I have talked a lot over this past series. To me, pretty simple, right? Like at this point, you have so many goals when you come into the season. And boxes you want to check and things you want this team to accomplish. And while they didn't win the division, this team makes the playoffs. They knock out a very expensive and game San Diego Padres team. And now they have taken the number 1 seed to the brink. They have pushed it back on the Milwaukee Brewers. They are going back to Milwaukee and leave it all on the table Saturday. So that's not me at all saying like, hey, we're just happy to be here. Whatever happens, shucks, I'll be happy. But it is to say, like, I am very proud of this team as a fan. And they have pushed this not as far as they can go. Obviously there's more work to be done, but they have done a lot of great work. And now you leave it all on the table in a Game 5. It's going to be a tough environment on the road, but this is what you play for. And I think thus far, this is absolutely all you can ask of the 2025 Chicago Cubs.
This is what you play for. This is what we as fans hope for. If you were to tell me back in 2017 that, hey, you will not have a similar experience like that year until 8 years later, I would have been, no way, not with this core. I'm reminded about Theo Epstein's famous quotes. Every season is sacred. So the fact that you and I, which we will, years from now, reminisce about this season, about Ian Happ's 3-run home run, about PCA's go-ahead base hit in the wild card and in this series as well, about Brad Keller coming out of nowhere, about all of these different storylines. To me, that's what's going to stand out. And you're right. This is not us going, oh shucks. If they lose tomorrow, it's no big deal. Of course not. But marking these moments is something that I wish I did more back then. And this go around, I'm watching those games dialed in. I'm burning those memories in my brain because I know every one of these is sacred.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like, obviously, the first 2 games of the series, I think a lot of us would be lying if we said we felt pretty confident after those first 2 games in Milwaukee. But what a response!
Oh, I was dead. I was dead.
Just
I
absolutely getting your bell rung in Milwaukee, their crowd, going wild from basically the minute all those games started. And to show up, serve court at home, it's a very impressive effort from this team. And I'm not a big fan necessarily of saying like, well, now all the pressure's on Milwaukee, right? Because the Cubs still want to win. Like, the pressure is on them as well. They've just already been dealing with it. But now is the point when you push it back to them. Like, we all watched it. We all suffered through it throughout the regular season, watching the Brewers on, a 13-game winning streak or going 20-4 over the course of a period of time, just basically being unbeatable, except by the Chicago Cubs, mind you, over like multiple months at a time. And this is going to be the first time for that team where now they are facing like, hey, 27 outs. If you don't show up, all of that doesn't mean a thing because you didn't beat the Chicago Cubs in the National League Division Series. So how teams respond to that, some teams meet that moment when their back gets against the wall for the first time. Some teams fold. We'll see what the Brewers have in store for us. So the pressure isn't all on them, but you have now put pressure on them that they have not felt in a while. They had a big lead in the division once they took it over. They held that for a couple months, and they probably felt real good after those first 2 games, feeling like, okay, we got this. Like, we're blowing them out. We're feeling good. They're running on fumes because they had to get past the Padres. Now these last, 48 hours is probably the first time in a while that this Brewers team is like, oh, shoot, like, this is do or die now. Like, we better show up. There is going to be a significant amount of pressure on them, and it'll be up to the Cubs to capitalize on that.
They also have a benchmark too. So the first 2 games, you had Misarowski pitch a few innings. You had the bullpen day in game 2. You saw what happened to Freddie Peralta from game 1 to yesterday, just having that little bit of slight precedence, seeing the same pitchers over and over and over again. It does give you a benchmark. It gives you a reference point to change. What Milwaukee may not have going into game 5, we'll see what they do with Shota, but Shota didn't pitch many innings. Matthew Boyd did not pitch many innings in the first game for obvious reasons, right? Did not look good, but it allowed them to make the change. And of course, Milwaukee will be making changes too, but just the exposure Milwaukee's pitchers have faced the Cubs right now seems to be a little bit more lopsided, at least up front. And so I believe going into game 5, I'm dialed in on, okay, well, if they do go with a bullpen game, which they're probably going to do, Milwaukee, what does Misarowski look like? Is he going to have the same type of repertoire? Is he going to be throwing 102? How do the other pitchers from that bullpen change how they've attacked Cubs hitters? Because we've already seen Shota, which we'll talk about later this episode. Shota tried to change his attack strategy in the second game. It did not work. Boyd changed yesterday after that brutal outing. It worked, which begs the question, okay, If we see Boyd making this change, then how do we infer what Shota is going to do next?
Yeah, we will see. A lot to think about, and that's one of those things. Like if the Brewers do end up putting Mizorowski out there, like that's sort of what I mean about, do you meet the moment? Do you fold a little bit? We've seen him have control problems, especially in that second half. And that's where you really need that kind of April, May Cubs offense, like dial in, be patient, and let the moment get to him, not to you. Right.
And you saw those at bats yesterday. Yep. Right. You saw Kyle Tucker extend at bats, Nico Horner extend at bats. They've shown the ability recently to do what you're talking about.
Yeah. So we have a lot to cover in this episode. We're going to, dive in and continue on like a full preview, who we expect to pitch, who we expect to see maybe from Milwaukee, the keys. I do want to talk a little bit before we hit our first ad break, Brendan, just about like what an incredible couple nights at Wrigley Field. This is one of those things where like, I feel like a lot of fan bases are going to feel this way. Plenty of my life, somewhat insane to say this because it felt like a curse, but like, what a privilege to have been born a Cubs fan and to be a Cubs fan. There is nothing like that environment. It is the most addicting thing I have experienced in my life. The crowd absolutely electric. We've got our guy, the Jedi of Chicago, in the YouTube chat saying he was the one gearing up those Freddie chants in the bleachers yesterday. The crowd up, down with every 2-strike pitch, every 3-2 pitch. Cubs player on offense goes 3-0, crowd's up. You can see Tom Ricketts even in the front row. He's up, getting ready, getting the fans involved. An electric atmosphere. It is absolutely unbelievable to be at those crowds. I know it comes through on TV. I know it comes through when Pat Hughes is explaining it and so eloquently describing it. But just an absolute unbelievable set of games so far in these first 2 series at Wrigley Field. And you saw it. The Brewers players talking about it. Freddie Peralta was talking about it. Pat Murphy talked about it. Of course, the Cubs players talking about it. It plays an effort in the game. It plays a role in the game. You can feel it. The crowd is an extra man on that field, but just absolutely electric atmosphere. And when they needed it the most, Brendan, to force a decisive Game 5, we saw like a vintage 2025 Cubs performance from this team. Matthew Boyd, after a bad start to begin this series, goes out there and deals, does his job, eats his innings, covers his outs, as Craig Counsell might like to say, per the game plan. You put up some crooked numbers. You were taking walks. You were putting heavy traffic on the bases. We'll talk about some of these players, but I don't even know what you say about Michael Busch at this point. It was a quintessential 2020, early 2025 Cubs effort when they absolutely needed it the most. It was an electric atmosphere. Just unbelievable to be a part of. And I desperately hope that we continue getting to do it. But what an effort from this team, this fan base to get us here to Saturday.
That's why we do this, for those moments, for those crowds, those memories, those salient moments. You've been fortunate to have experienced so many playoff runs over the years, mostly bad, although there was one good one, not too long ago. I want to pose a question to you before the next ad break. Is it different than 2016, 2015 environments? And let me just give my context. I went to a few playoff games in 2016 and 2015 as well. I'm watching the game on TV, and I can't tell if it's my own projection, but I feel as if the crowd, there's this like weight that's not there. And as a result, the boom, the roar, it's greater frequent, and the down moments don't seem to last as long. It feels like when you watch these games, it is noticeably different than what I've experienced watching them in years past.
It feels different personally, right? I think in 15 and 16, there's obviously just a heavy burden. They had to win. They had to break the curse. They had to finally win that championship. So all of us,
thank God they did.
Thank God they did. Right? They did.
Which year
I
was that
do
again?
feel that difference. 2016, they won the
Okay,
World
2016.
Series.
Okay, just making sure.
I do think it's like a tangible difference. It's certainly not to say that, we don't care anymore, or the pressure's off, right? Like, of course not. I'm a nervous wreck. I'm a nervous wreck right now, even for tomorrow. But
My hands are sweaty.
it does feel different. It does feel different in a way, just because when they went down, like in some of those games against the Dodgers or in the World Series to Cleveland, you felt that like, oh my God, what if it doesn't happen? What then? If this team doesn't do it, then when is it going to happen? How do we even function like that? And I think that sense is kind of gone. It is still that pressure, still fans. Like the 2025 team means something in its own sense to everybody, but that big looming cloud just isn't there. Where in 2016, I went to all those games feeling like they have to win. This is their championship. And it's just up to the universe or some other team to steal it from them. And then I don't know how we go forward. I don't really feel that way. Right. It's hard the difference in the crowd, et cetera. I've heard, some like, is it the loudest it's been? Like, I don't think so. There were some moments in 2016 that like, I can't even fathom how loud they were to be a part of, but it's electric. It's different. We'll keep going on it. We got to hit our first ad break here. We'll be back in a second, and we're going to continue diving into Game 5.
Okay, Bet365, whatever the moment, it is never ordinary at Bet365. New customers now get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5, win or lose. If football's your game, the early payout offer has your back. If your team goes up by 17 points, guess what? You're paid instantly. That's right. Your bet wins even if your team does not. If you love building parlays, Bet365's 100% parlay boost lets you double your winnings. And if you're a baseball fan, guess what? The MLB early payout offer pays out when your team goes 5 runs ahead. Instant payout, win or lose after that. So download the app, use code CHGO365, deposit $10 and place a $5 bet to get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. Use your bonus bets on spreads, totals, props, futures, and more, because whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or over. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. In-app only. Almost Home Tavern. All right, if you're looking for these spots to catch your favorite games this season, we've got a place that checks all the boxes. It's chef-driven with elevated bar food that's locally inspired. They've got the best smash burger and the best tavern-style pizza, which is amazing. But it's not just about the food. They also have tons of games, including pool, darts, big buck hunter, and shuffleboard. And they have wall-to-wall TVs, which is perfect for watching literally any sport, even Game 5, Corey. And the owners, CHGO diehard members and massive Bears fans. So yes, the Bears are repped hard there. They've even got a covered beer garden with TVs. If you're missing the thing, you're never going to miss it, rain or shine. It's just a block north of Wrigley Field. So it's the ideal pregame, during game, and postgame Cubs spot. They also have daily specials and happy hour. It's actually worth your time. So go check them out at Almost Home Tavern.
Love Almost Home. About like a 5-minute walk. If you watch the game there, you can head over to the marquee pretty quickly when they flip it to Cubs win. Just if you're planning on your Saturday night, just some things to look forward to. Finishing up just on like the crowd and the environment as we head into the Game 5 preview. I do think and I'm seeing some of it in the YouTube chat too. Like, I think ultimately what 2016 taught us, Brendan, that most of us literally didn't have in our brains, is that apparently the other shoe doesn't always drop.
Okay.
Right. We had grown up, especially you and I mean, and really everybody, but like, I feel like, us, because that's who I'm talking to, like, we had been conditioned to just think like, well, some catastrophic thing is going to happen, or they will just peter out. They have the great season in 2008. They just unceremoniously get knocked out. Obviously 2003. And 2016 taught us, like, apparently it's possible that they just win. Nothing catastrophic happens, or something catastrophic does happen. And I didn't know they were allowed to do this, but they overcome it. Right. So I think you do feel that in the crowd. Jedi of Chicago says like there's a lightness. Beating the Padres like settles things down. Does
Good point.
House money a little bit. Like, you've made the playoffs, you won a series. Like I said, you push the number 1 seed to the brink. Like, doesn't mean that there's we don't care about Saturday, but it feels like, all right, like they pushed this pretty far. Like, so yeah, just amazing. I'm very curious what the environment feels like tomorrow. I know, I'm sure a lot of people from Chicago are trying to get those tickets and get in there. The first two games looked very light compared to like the regular season on Chicago fans, and being at Wrigley these last two games, very light on Milwaukee fans, especially compared to regular season or like game 163, because that was like during the day in a weird kind of ticket situation. Very, very light. It was mostly the family section for the Brewers that were kind of leading that charge. But it's electric. It's just absolutely electric. I hope we could continue to keep doing it, but an A+ job from the Wrigley faithful so far in these playoffs.
All right. Are we ready for tomorrow? Are we ready to do this?
Yeah. So I think the best way that I would set this up, and we've kind of set this up even before the Padres series, like they are going to hyper manage everything. That is what I would expect. When a pitcher hits the 3-batter minimum, they are ready. They are eligible to be taken out. That is how I would be looking at this. Now, certainly you're not hoping to cycle through 9 different pitchers. You're hoping some guys can get you, eat some innings or get some consistent outs. But you have to leave this all on the field. There is no tomorrow. You can't be looking ahead to anything. And so I would expect Craig and Tommy to hyper manage everything. And I know there's a lot of people that don't always like that. They, feel, hey, this guy's in a rhythm. I don't like taking him out. I don't like going to the bullpen. I would get ready for it. The minute someone's giving up hard contact or they don't like those matchups, the bullpen is going to be churning. And I think Craig said it in his press conference today. They didn't name a starter, but other than Matthew Boyd, you better be ready to pitch. Unless your name is Matthew Boyd, you're going to be in that bullpen. You might be doing some warm-ups, and you might need to expect to get in this game, because if there is a matchup to exploit, they're going to do it. If they don't like the way a guy looks after he faces 3 batters, they are eligible to be taken out. That is how I would be doing it, and that is how I expect Craig Counsell to do it. As far as how they start the game, Brendan, I'm not really sure. There were some reports that it wouldn't be Shota. And, I did sort of agree with the notion, like, I know you don't want to tip your hand, but like if it was going to be Shota, he was on normal rest. He made the start the last one. You could have just announced that. But we don't know. But I don't know what I necessarily want them to do. I do think however you start it, you just have to be ready to quickly execute things. I know people are going to call for Colin Ray. I think Colin Ray is an option. I think Shota's an option. I think Andrew Kittredge opening the game is an option. We've got our guy Braggs here producing tonight.
He wants Ben Brown. He wants Ben Brown going 6
against
shutout.
The Brewers. Let's see how crazy Craig Counsell wants to get, folks. I do think, looking around social media, Brennan, it feels like Colin Ray seems to be the fans' choice, if you will. Now, if the fans had their way, Matthew Boyd wouldn't have started game 4, and Ian Happ would have been DFA'd 3 months ago.
That's great. And Nico Horner would be Bryce Miller pitching for game 4.
Luckily not making all those calls. But look, I think this is a situation where I don't necessarily know that there is a wrong answer, so to speak. You don't have your starting rotation set up that someone is geared to pitch 6 innings in this game. You're approaching this from a somewhat like hands up, we just got to get 27 outs perspective. And so I think the only way that they get this wrong is if someone is left in the game too long. Yeah. Otherwise, like, you're playing matchups at some point in this game, Brendan, somebody is going to have to pitch in a disadvantageous situation. You're not going to be able to line up every lefty to only pitch to lefties in their lineup. Pat Murphy, we've already seen him do it. He'll sub lefties for righties. At some point, guys are just going to have to get outs and do their job. So how they start it, I'm going to leave that to them. And then it's just about every second of that game managing it correctly.
3 points stand out. Number 1, Michael Busch. Obviously, Michael Busch, but he hit lefties yesterday. So if they start with a lefty again, what does Craig do? Does Craig keep him in, or do we see what they did in the first time they showed a bullpen? You have Justin Turner bat leadoff. So that's point number one. Given how locked Michael Busch has looked,
yeah, missed me with it. Yeah, no.
Right. Then again, Justin Turner did have a base hit in that second game, right? But I'm looking for that. I'm with you. I'm just playing devil's advocate over here. All right. Point number two is, how will the bullpen be deployed? At some point, you're seeing Misiorowski, right? Is he going to start if you don't throw a lefty, or is he going to be used right away after the first inning? How did this happen in game two? Will you Aaron Ashby pitch an inning and 2/3? Nick Mears came in for one at bat. That was it. Inning over and inning two. Misiorowski comes in. He's pumping 102 on average. He pitches 3 innings. Game gets out of hand. Chad Patrick, Jared Cohen, Trevor McGill, Abner Uribe, their closer at this point. So is it going to be a similar strategy? Likely. The order in which he deploys those guys will be up for grabs. Maybe we see Uribe earlier in the game. That's the second point. The order of operations for Misiorowski. The third point that I really want to dial in on is Brad Keller's usage. So it is an off day. I do think we have to discuss his velo is down 2.5 miles per hour.
Yeah.
So number one, does Craig weigh that heavily, or does he just go with the default form he's seen most of the time and accept the risk that the velo may not be there? Brad Keller is a guy who does not get much swing and miss. So the fact that he's going to be throwing 2-3 miles per hour slower, it presents a risk, no doubt about that. So does that mean Brad Keller then is maybe saved for the ninth inning instead of the 8th inning? Maybe we see Kittredge in the 8th that otherwise, if he doesn't open, may be safe for, a more higher leverage earlier in the game. Those are the situations I'm looking at. If we start to see the high leverage guys, Palencia, Kittredge, Thielbar, be used before the 6th inning, Keller's coming in and his arms falling off. So that's what I would expect. And I would really dial in on those 3 trends as the game progresses tomorrow.
100%. And I think the other thing too, especially knowing that both teams are, basically doing a bullpen game, there might be starters involved, but I don't think anyone is earmarking this as like,
Is
hey,
Jameson
we're hoping this guy goes
pitch
6 innings, right? Like it's going to be very interesting. This is where the chess match comes in, because it's on from the minute the game starts. Both of these managers, it's very difficult to shut a game down like in the 2nd inning. But like, hey, if one of these, the first inning has been full of fireworks in these games, if one of these teams jumps out to a lead, like they may, like you may operate in this game as like, hey, if we have a 2-0 lead, 3-0 lead, like we're trying to be done. And we're going to go to our high leverage relievers because we want this game still at 2-0 and 3-0, and to give our offense opportunities.
Well, you saw him do that in game 4. Like the game's 5-0. Keller's coming in already, right?
Yes.
The game's 6-0. We're going Caleb Thielbar
no
just to be safe. No messing around. You will see that tomorrow.
Well, and the other part of it too is like, if you're only down 2-0, 3-0, you may go to your high leverage relievers to keep it there. Yeah. Right? You need to keep a game within distance. So I think both teams probably have guys that they would prefer not to use early, or maybe would prefer not to use at all, depending on, how they're feeling and how these 48 hours of recovery time, suits them as they warm up and show up on Saturday. But this is a real chess match, man. And like we saw moments in that San Diego series where you kind of felt like Craig had gotten the better of the other dugout, and maybe did they wait too long to pull the starter after the Cubs had scored the runs? Those types of things. In that last game, obviously the decisive game 3, like Mason Miller never pitches in that game. He's just sitting in the bullpen. Should they have used him earlier? Who knows, right? These are all questions that we don't have to ask because the Cubs won that game.
That's right.
That's how these games like tomorrow are going to play out. It's all about timing and when to pull those levers to either try to shut a game down and continue giving your offense a chance to expand the lead, or keeping a game close because there's no tomorrow and you don't want to let it get out of hand and have your offense trying to cover a 4 or 5+ run hole.
Yeah. Let's hit our second ad break, come back around. I do have stuff on Shota. We can talk about some of the offense guys. Kyle Tucker had a home run. A lot to talk about. Let's do the second ad break right now. Hey, Cub fans, Toyota's got 25 vehicles with available all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive. Ready for Chicago, whatever it throws at you. The RAV4 brings legendary versatility. The Grand Highlander is that third row, which is actually adult size and is seriously comfortable. And the Tacoma's wild side, yeah, that comes standard. From job size to camp size to game nights, there is an AWD or four-wheel drive Toyota to get you there in style. Find yours at toyota.com or visit your Chicagoland Toyota dealer today. Toyota, let's go places. And hey, if you're a real diehard Cubs fan, it's time to be a CHGO diehard. Upgrade your fandom today for access to exclusive written content, a free t-shirt, discounts on merch and events, and entry into our CHGO Discord lounge where we talk all things Chicago sports every day. Join the thousands already in the community at allchgo.com. We cannot wait to connect with you on an even greater level. Best Bears coverage in the world, hands down. We got Braggs producing. I spend my entire Sunday watching those guys, privileged to watch them do their work, and highly recommend it. Monarch Money. Staying on top of your finances should not feel like a second job. That's why I've been using Monarch Money, and it is an all-in-one personal finance tool that actually makes me feel organized and in control. What I love is just how easy Monarch makes it. It's built for busy people who are rushing, people who don't want to look at spreadsheets all day, although sometimes I do like looking at spreadsheets all day. You just link your accounts and it does all the heavy lifting, clean visuals, love those graphs, smart spending categories and insights that actually help you make better decisions. Here's the thing, when you're doing well financially, it's easy to ghost, but ignoring your money means missing chances to save even more. Use code CHGO at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com, code CHGO.
All right, folks, back with you. Let's finish on the pitching, and then we can go into some of the other stuff. I think, Brendan, I think Craig has proven over the few months that he's not necessarily go with the guys that got you here, but he is someone who is trusting the track record. And I think is a big believer, and we've talked about this, that this team, to be successful and at its most successful, has Matthew Boyd dominating in starts, Shota dominating in starts, Kyle Tucker hitting, slugging in the middle of that order, Ian Happ getting on base and doing his thing in that order. So many things that, I think the fan base has vacillated back and forth on, but Craig is a believer, this is the track record, and this team at its best, in its highest ceiling in our minds on the projection system, has these things working for it, and we either need it to happen and trust it, or we're going to go down with it. And so that's where, I think some of the conversation has been will he start Shota despite the struggles? Because that's just where things line up. And that's where this team might be at its best. I expect him to pitch on Saturday. I don't necessarily, I don't necessarily expect him to start. My concern with Shota is exactly what it was when we were coming in to the playoffs, when you and I talked about this, and ahead of that series in Milwaukee. So many of these games in October are not decided by the long ball, but there's so many environments where the runs just aren't there. Or we saw it in this last game 4 with the Cubs and the Brewers. Both teams had a lot of heavy traffic in that game. The Cubs ended up being the ones that get the big hits, the big blows, the home run. Ian Happ is the one that hits the big blow in that game. But the Brewers had plenty of traffic. One of those guys runs into one, right? All of a sudden, that's a very different game. And that is something that Shota has really struggled with. That home run rate ballooned in the second half, especially in September. We saw it take hold in Milwaukee. And that's where I get concerned, is that in the playoffs, a lot of times it's difficult to string those walks, string those hits together, and have those just, station to station innings where you're ending up putting up crooked numbers. But the thing you have got to avoid is giving up the long ball, especially with men on base. So I expect him to pitch, and he's looked good at parts of these starts. But the concern is you have got to keep the ball in the park. This is a pesky Brewers offense. And look, if they soft line drive you to death, so be it, right? What are you going to do about that? If ground balls find holes, things like that, what are you going to do? But like we saw earlier in this series, if you're losing a game because William Contreras is taking you deep or Andrew Vaughn is taking you deep, you can't have it. You can't have it in those moments. And especially like we saw earlier, Cubs jumped out to a 3-0 lead. How quick do the Brewers get it back? Because you can't keep the ball in the ballpark. So that's the concern.
Shota, in August 21st, had a successful outing against the Brewers. Pitched 7 innings, just gave up 3 hits. That was not even 2 months ago. The start on Monday, an unmitigated disaster. Completely different than how he attacked the Brewers about 7 weeks ago. What exactly were the differences? Let's take a look, shall we? On the left is what you see in game 2 against Milwaukee.
Payoff
when
graphs.
he gave up.
Look at this.
Look at that. When it's about damn time, isn't it? On the left is what you see Shota try to attack Milwaukee with. Now, the standout difference, if you don't want to look at all of these individual pitches, the standout difference is that Shota went up and in with intent to right-handed batters. What Shota did not accomplish is going up. He went in, but there was too much belt and waist high pitches. The home runs he gave up to Chourio and Vaughn inside. One of those was a sweeper inside off the plate, was not dipped, and the fastballs were not elevated. Shift your eyes to the right. What do you see? First and foremost, those red pitches, they are not up and into right-handed batters. They're up and into lefties and up in general and away from righties. So the question I have is that actually the strategy in game 2? Did they want to go more in on righties, and did Shota accomplish that? Because if that's the case, then the result from the game 2 may not be as dire as you and I perceive, because you can interpret that as succeeding in intent. This also begs the question, well, do we see him look different in this next game and use a similar strategy that he showed on August 21st? That will be in the form of fastballs generally less inside and more generally up and hitting those targets, and also relying more on that split and hammering in on the command and feel of that split. If he can do that, then I think we're going to be in pretty good shape. When you're watching him pitch, look at where Kelly's setting up. If he's setting up generally up, you know there's probably going to be an intent change. If he's setting up generally in, then it signals the strategy is sound, but he wasn't executing in the first game, and that means they believe there's reason he can execute in this game. That's what I'm looking for. I do think there's reason to be optimistic. I don't think the first game in game 2 was really egregiously bad. It was not good, but it wasn't this command that was all over the place, and he was on the margins of error, and it just cost him.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what Craig decides to trust. I mean, then, you look at someone like Colin Ray, obviously didn't give up any runs earlier in this series against Milwaukee, but did give up 4 hits. Did walk 2 guys, didn't get any strikeouts. I don't think got a lot of whiffs in that game, wasn't generating whiffs. So there's, reason for concern there. He obviously was hit harder by lefties. I think lefties hit almost 290 against him this year on the season. So there's parts in that lineup, if you were to start Colin Ray and they throw, Bryce Terang and Christian Yelich at the top of that lineup, like those are going to be dangerous matchups. So it's all to say, as I said, you're going to face disadvantageous matchups. There's not a great solution. I know people joked about it, but they're not going to pull some IL scheme and get Cade Horton out there or anything like that. All right.
I don't know, man. Soroka's shoulder looked a little tight to me.
It did. I thought so too. Yeah, I thought so too. From the stands, I could see in the bullpen. I was like, he looks hurt, honestly.
Yeah, a little tight.
And it's funny too that for whatever reason, everybody just picks Soroka for that. If they're going to do someone, it's got to be Michael Soroka that's faking this injury.
No offense to you, Soroka.
So Guy, it's all to say, like, I hear the arguments with everything, right? And you would say, even if, they're going to do Andrew Kittredge. Well, they tried that before and they gave up a run when they tried opening with Kittredge and then turning it over to Shota. So that didn't necessarily work the first time they tried. There's not a great, perfect, this is a no question, no risk option. Everybody's going to have to do their job. Some righties are going to have to pitch the lefties. Some lefties are going to have to pitch the righties. They're going to have to face bad matchups. Guys just got to do their job. The Cubs pitching staff has done a really great job over the course of this season. We've seen guys step up in ways that I certainly wouldn't have imagined. If you had told me in April that Drew Pomeranz would be a postseason ace, I would not have. Well, maybe I would have believed you, but I wouldn't like, man, Tommy Hotovy really on something.
I mean, you
right?
rolled your eyes at me in February about Brad Keller. You rolled your eyes on the show. I got the video of it. I mentioned Brad Keller.
We'll see if you find the video proof of that. I
already know what it is. I
don't know about that, but
I'm getting it.
So yeah, look, Craig Counsell says this all the time. And like, sometimes, I know fans get tired of hearing this stuff. It's about getting outs. 27 outs. That's what you got to do. They're going to have a plan for how they'd like to do it, but best laid plans often fall apart in October. They're going to have to be ready. They're going to have to be quick. And I would expect people churning in that bullpen basically the entire game.
Do you expect Taillon?
I don't know. Maybe.
Why not? Right? It's technically his bullpen day. Yeah. So I mean, like 1 inning, 2 inning, absolutely. I mean, all hands on deck. Quite frankly,
all hands on deck. And yeah, like I said, look, you have to consider too. You've been riding some of these guys. Pomeranz has pitched a lot. I know you're going to have 48 hours between this game, but like Palencia has pitched a lot.
Yeah.
Like Keller obviously has pitched a ton. Yeah. So.
Would you be surprised to see Ben Brown in higher leverage? Let's say like 4th, 5th inning.
Well, I mean, look, as our guy Bragg said in the chat here, like, he has been good against the Brewers. He's had some nice outings against the Brewers. That's the same thing, right? Like, you just have to be hyper aware of what is the risk here. And I think with Brown, we've seen it in some of these starts that the command escapes him and things get off the rails quick. And the exercise tomorrow for both teams is nip it in the bud. Like, this is a game you don't want to wait a batter too long. You don't want to like see if a guy can get you through a couple innings. As soon as it looks off, you got to pull the plug and try somebody else.
Well, I mean, to your point, right? So that circumstance would be a dirty inning where you need 1 and 2 outs. That way you don't roll the lineup over. So you only have them for that whiff. Craig Counsell did say Ben Brown's on the roster instead of Javi Assad because Ben Brown gets whiffs.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I think they probably would have rather had Assad if they were being maybe, truthful about this, but that's just the way baseball goes. But if the circumstances work out and they need a whiff early in the game, of course, I think you can see him in a dirty inning.
Yeah. Well, and especially look, like, you talk about whiffs too, like, especially with this Brewers team, like they make a lot of contact. They put the pressure on you. They put the pressure on your defense. And at times, we've talked about that for years with so many of these guys that they have good stuff or they get good results. But sometimes you have to be able to throw the ball past people. Right. And you need it to not be in play. You saw, ask the Phillies how they feel about when the ball gets put in play. All right. Like, that's what happens, man. And the Brewers are pesky. Like, that's the thing. So it's going to be interesting. I think we'll spend the last segment here talking about the offense and what we expect. And, before we hit our first ad break here, we got another minute or so before we do that. But I expect the lineup to look the same. I don't know that it's going to matter who starts or what they do. I know, we saw in one of the games, obviously, as you talked about, Justin Turner getting in there for just a couple of quick things. I would say I don't expect it. I think it's game 5. Michael Busch is the hottest hitter on the planet. Your offense showed up in this last game, finally kind of looking like themselves from earlier in the year. Ian Happ with the big hit. Kyle Tucker, an on-base machine, launching one, Jason Hayward style from the Cardinals into the left center gap. And I think you're riding it. I think you're riding it. Pat Murphy is obviously going to try to exploit those matchups, and I think you let him do it. This is your offense. The best outcome for the Cubs is that group 1 through 9 shows up and gets it done like they have a ton this year. Not as much in that second half, but that would be the area. The pitching staff, you're coming into a situation where, like I said, like vintage postseason John Lester is not walking through the door. You're going to have to piece it together. He might be able to pitch. Maybe give him a call. Like, you're going to have to piece things together. There might be calls that Craig makes that make a lot of us uncomfortable, right? Watching this guy come into the mound in a playoff game, et cetera, et cetera. But for the offense, like, I wouldn't get cute with it. I would ride with these guys. They're coming off a good couple games here. They've been making a lot of traffic. I think generally they look good, and I would ride with it. I wouldn't get cute with that. Maybe later in the game, depending on the situations. And when you start getting, if you start seeing those really tough relievers, maybe you think about that. But the best version of this team is that group doing their job and putting runs on the board. And I say you ride with them or die with them.
All right, here, last ad break here. Finish up this next segment. Man, there's nothing like catching a game live. The crowd, the energy, that first crack of the bat, but getting those tickets, usually a nightmare. You're stuck in queues, prices jump at checkout, and by the time you're in, all the good seats, they're gone. That's why I started using Game Time. It's honestly the hack for getting amazing tickets fast. The app gives the advantage back to fans in just a few taps. I was scrolling through great seats for the next Cubs game, Game 5, and within minutes, I can see all the different tickets. And even if I wanted to wait last second, I know Game Time is there for me. I love also the seat view feature. You can literally see what your view looks like before you buy. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. That's CHGO for $20 off. Tap, ticket, go, download Game Time today. You know that moment? The one where you realize you left your favorite sunglasses at the beach or on the roof of your car or at a gas station 3 states away? I've been there too. In fact, I've actually left my glasses on top of my car, drove away, not a happy guy. But then I found Shady Rays and it changed the game. These sunglasses are made for idiots just like me, for those who actually experience real life. It is seriously good looking. They have polarized, durable, and not stupidly expensive shades. Here's the wild part. If you lose them or break them, even on day one, Shady Rays will send you a brand new pair. No guilt trip, just replacements. Now I actually wear my sunglasses without fear. On hikes, at concerts, on the boat, even if I put them on top of my car. Shady Rays is eyewear that has your back. So we've teamed up with Shady Rays to bring you an exclusive offer. Head to shadyrays.com. Use code CHGO for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself. The shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people.
All right, Brendan, I think we already talked about, kind of one of the keys. If you see Mizorowski, like, we know he can pump gas. We know he has the potential to blow you away, but also has the potential to be quite wild. Yeah. And, maybe that adrenaline gets to you, the pressure of the Game 5. And so the key in that situation is take advantage of it. Don't give in. We know this offense is capable of it. At times, we didn't see them do it, but we know this offense is capable of letting a pitcher make trouble for himself, taking key walks and pouncing at the right opportunity, but not beating yourself when the pitcher is trying to do it.
Mizorowski, in that first game, you mentioned the wildness. The wildness in that game manifested in pitches over the heart of the plate. Don't get this twisted. 103 miles per hour, 104, no matter where you throw it, it's difficult to hit. However, you see few pitches hitting the black edges in that game too. I can overlay Freddie Peralta's zone profile. Freddie Peralta in that last game, in Game 4, 80% of his pitches were touching the black edges. So second time through, in less than a week, they will be facing this sort of stuff. Second time through, there's an expectation for him. Does that mean jumping on pitches earlier on? Does that mean just simply not missing those heart pitches, those middle zone pitches? If that's the case, when you typically see a profile like this, it's not sustainable. Having this sort of, almost every one of his sinkers are over the middle of the plate. There's a significant chunk of red outside the zone, right? So it's a matter of waiting for your pitch and having the expectation that there's some pattern that is going to click for these hitters that they've just seen.
Yeah. And, look, the other side of the coin, right? When you have a guy that can throw in the hundreds, if the Cubs are free swinging and whatever, like that's obviously a momentum shift. The crowd is going to feed off of that. If they're being blown away, like that's going to be one of those areas where the Cubs need to keep themselves composed, like not let that get to them. It's going to be overpowering, but he's not going to pitch the whole game, right? So two sides of that coin, depending on what version of Miz you end up seeing, when we see him, all those questions. But I think, look, like we saw it on Thursday, like keep the traffic heavy and pounce when you can. It was something that we've been waiting for in these playoffs. Obviously, so much of the Cubs runs coming in the early innings, several of these games scoring early and then not again, just kind of disappearing for the rest of the game. And so certainly you'd like the recipe to be much more like Thursday. I think both teams in that last game, plenty of traffic and opportunities that they wish they had cashed in on. That's certainly going to be a key. You don't want to leave those runs on third base. Very nervous in the game yesterday when the Cubs left that runner on third with just one out and didn't get that in. I think it was the fourth run at the time, like felt pivotal, like please get that fourth run in. So, if they load the bases, they're not able to take the lead. So that's always a key. But I think we, have seen throughout these playoffs, what is the key to success for this team? Obviously, Michael Busch, we'll have a completely separate conversation about him in the offseason, but just astounding what he has been able to do in these playoffs, paying off a massive regular season and just absolutely carrying that over in spades.
38 home runs, including the postseason. Insane.
Yeah. Nico Horner, his first playoff appearance, hitting 429. I mean, just unbelievable. The exact type of hitter you want to see in October, doing exactly what that type of hitter does in October, just constantly getting hits, pulling base hits, going oppo for base hits, taking those extra bases, just excellent stuff from Nico Horner. Kyle Tucker, alive. I know, people frustrated with him throughout the second half of the year as he's playing through multiple injuries and not looking like himself at times, but driving a home run. He's walking at an insane clip in these playoffs.
Also a 429 OBP.
Amazing on base work from Kyle Tucker. And finally seeing a little bit of the slug. Seiya, not, some of his best at bats in the game last night, but he's at times in this postseason been the only source of slug and offense for this team outside of Michael Busch, of course. Matt Shaw, finally getting a knock in the game on Thursday, but he's been getting on base. He's been taking some walks, being patient. Ian Happ, of course, the big hit, waiting for that, coming from the left side, ripping one off Freddie Peralta. That's what you want to see. Like we've talked about it. Like we know this offense has the ceiling and we've seen it for months at a time. Like what they can do when they are firing and going as a group. Even in the game on Thursday, they missed 4 other home runs. Kelly's just foul. Felt like every ball Ian Happ hit was either a home run or just short of the basket. Yep. So we've seen it. We have seen this offense when they are clicking. We've seen glimmers of it in the postseason. Thursday felt like a good bunch of it coming together, and you leave it all out on the floor. You're going to here's the thing. We know this Brewers pitching staff is tough. You're going to see some guys with some heavy velo, some great stuff, and Pat Murphy is going to churn through them. This is going to be as difficult for this lineup as they can possibly make it in terms of the different looks they're going to face, the handedness splits, the velo, everything. They are going to make this very, very difficult. But we've seen this offense do it. They have the tools to do it. They got to put it together one more time here against the Brewers.
Listen, we started this season 7 months ago in Japan, waking up for me 3 a.m. I started this season watching practice, watching and seeing Rich Beisterfeld's photos in January. This has been a 10-month season. It's felt like 2 seasons in 1 season. Every single conversation we've had is to get to this moment, to get to these games, to get to the games where honestly, all the trends you and I just talked about, they likely will not manifest tomorrow. It's going to be one of those games, as baseball always is, of surprises where things are unexpected. That's the nature of this game. For all we know, Mashal hits 3 home runs. For all we know, Kyle Tucker hits 3 home runs. Maybe we don't even see Shota. Maybe Colin Ray does pitch. We don't know. Baseball in a 1-game sample, all hands on deck. You cannot expect a single thing. And sometimes in elimination games, you have 30-something old catchers hit Game 7 home runs against Andrew Miller. You have guys who have looked awful for the past week hit home runs. In the Cubs case, they had Seiya, PCA, and Tucker not perform at all for 6+ weeks. And those guys within this postseason stretch have been some of your significant contributors. Pete with the clutch RBI hits. This is what it's about, Corey, for moments like these.
And I think, look, it sounds simple, and then we'll give our final thoughts here and let you all try to get some sleep. I don't get much sleep when
I didn't sleep last night. My neck is killing me, by the way.
I know it sounds simple, but especially in a decisive Game 5, and because it's paced the Cubs a lot of this way, sound defense, continuing to make those big plays, taking those extra base hits away from these Brewers. They make a lot of contact, not letting cheap hits fall in, not letting
sun getting in your eyes, no short hops,
rounders turn into hits. We've seen in that San Diego series, it felt like Dansby Swanson kind of won it for the Cubs with his defense. Like, you need that, of course, to show up in a decisive Game 5. Clean baseball. And then just staying with their approach, man. Like I said, you're going to face a lot of different looks. It's going to be aggressive. You're going to have to keep an eye on that iPad to figure out who's coming in and see how you want to approach them. I got 3 screens
watching this game. I got the Vizcast on Savant. I got the whole bullpen situations up. It's a mess over here. Let me tell you that.
Keeping within your approach, letting the pitcher put himself in trouble if that's what they're giving you. If you're getting hittable pitches, pounce on them. And then, situationally, like, these are games where you may see the managers hyper manage in some of those situations, maybe more sack bunts, things like that. Execute. Got to execute. In a decisive Game 5, we talk about it all the time in the long haul of a season, but living on those margins and getting those little things right. You can't give an inch in an elimination game. You have to take them away. And when the Cubs are really good at it, they got to show up and do it for one more game.
I'm nervous.
So when we don't have a full pitching matchup and everything is sort of, we've seen very different games depending on where these teams have been playing so far in this series. I don't know what to expect, Brendan, but I'll go back to kind of how we began this conversation, which is I think you have to be proud of this team and you have to see the fight that they've put up. And they battled back from being down 2-0 after playing a tough wild card series, and they have pushed the #1 seed to the brink, and they will leave it all out on that field. The Brewers got the best of them in the division. The Cubs got the best of the Brewers in the regular season series, and somebody is going to celebrate tomorrow and end up having the last laugh. The Cubs have put themselves in a position to take that. And I think you got to be happy with that. You got to be proud of that. And as long as they, don't give a bad effort tomorrow, you ride with the boys, and it is, it is what it is. I know that's simple to say, but ultimately, look, like I said, this is what we do it for. It's been a long time since we've had those moments at Wrigley Field, and this team has given us some excellent ones this October. Doesn't mean we don't want more. Doesn't mean the job is finished, but it's been a fun ride thus far. I desperately hope it continues. I'm extraordinarily nervous, but I believe in these boys. They've shown the fight. It's in there. That level and that ceiling is there for them to do it, and we know they're capable of it. And I hope they go out on the field tomorrow and prove it. But it's been a pleasure thus far. I hope it continues, man.
15 seconds and you can sign off. Listen, I'm letting myself believe what we saw in the last couple of innings there. Kyle Tucker, Michael Busch. I'm thinking crazy thoughts, okay? I'm thinking crazy thoughts over here. Let's do it. Crazy thoughts. Let's go.
Let's do it. Cubs Brewers decisive Game 5 on Saturday night from Milwaukee. As Brendan said, we woke up in March in Japan to watch this team, then went back to spring training, CubsCon, all that stuff. It all comes down to tomorrow and a trip to Los Angeles to play for a pennant on the line. I say this with as much enthusiasm as I can possibly muster. Thank you for your support. And as always, go Cubs.
We all silly like the mayor.